Naughty Dog is completely cooked, and I want to see it.
There's been this growing obsession with division in gaming. I think everybody has felt it at this point. Everything's being politicized or polarized in some way, shape, or form. We're watching companies burn billions of dollars accomplishing nothing. Meanwhile,
Well, we don't really want this to happen to gaming. Most of us are, in fact, against this. I feel that that's a very reasonable thing to say. And the people who are for this are very far and few between. But sadly, they are also the most deranged individuals, like Neil Druckmann, like a lot of these woke, company pushing, agenda driven CEOs and whatnot.
some of the most successful games, well, they're not drawing a line in the sand, they're opening a door and welcoming people in. So, what brings somebody to disregard that entirely?
You know who opened the door and let people in? Baldur's Gate 3. Sold literally 20 million or something. Or it was 40 million at this point. Insane. Just make a game.
Oh, there's this thing that a lot of people don't really seem to like. I'm gonna do more of it. Recently, Neil Druckmann shared details about their upcoming game, Intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet. And in it, he completely disregards a lot of the negative feedback around The Last of Us Part 2, mocking it in a lot of cases, and basically saying that the next game is going to be even.
Neil Druckmann is a hypocrite because The Last of Us TV series season 2 is happening, and I hate that show. Season 1 was horrible. I watched like 4 episodes and then quit. It was just that goddamn sad. Every single time I looked at Ellie, I thought that any moment she's just gonna start putting dirt in her mouth by the handful because she's literally retarded. And yeah, that's pretty much the story there. But the reason that Neil Druckmann is a hypocrite is because on season 2, where Abby is supposed to be a thing, he is gonna get an actual actress that is hot and looks good to play her. And she doesn't look like goddamn She-Hulk on steroids. Yeah. And Neil Druckmann said, oh no, Abby is completely reasonable. She needs to be that buff to do the things that she's doing. It was all just pandering. It was all performative. And now Neil Druckmann is exposed to be the hypocrite loser that we all knew he was, but he fought so valiantly to say he isn't.
Even worse. I think that the most successful studios are the ones that are the most humble. They take in feedback, good or bad, they process it, and then they implement that into their game. While they are creatives, they understand that they are making something that people are supposed to want to buy. There are decisions that you can make, there are things that you can do, but at the end of the day, people have to buy your game. Otherwise, you go out of business. There is this misconception that artistic integrity means refusing to compromise, but the best creatives in this industry understand the difference between challenging your audience and alienating them.
I don't know if that's a misconception. I don't think that's a real thing. The good companies that make good games decline a lot of art. Because a lot of artists actually make things that are cool and whatnot, but maybe they don't make it in the right style, so it doesn't really fit into the game aesthetic. This is how I think we honestly got games like Avowed, but everything just looks like an absolute fucking puked rainbow mess. That's because artists made things that look good on their own, but when they are put into the environment, they kind of fucking fail. And a lot of the best studios are always gonna decline most of the work that artists make because it doesn't fit the aesthetic perfect.
The more you treat your audience like an obstacle, the more likely you are to get exactly what you want and avoid them entirely. With billions of dollars lost at this point, you would think that studios might want to take a step back and reassess. There are themes, characters, messages, and art styles that simply aren't resonating with players, and forcing them harder isn't going to change that. The industry, hell, the world itself is more divided than it's ever been, and a fractured audience is bad for business. Naughty Dog's upcoming game, Intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet, or perhaps more aptly named the Self-Defeating Prophet at this point, was first introduced back at the Game Awards 2024, and I won't lie, on a visual level, it looks great. The art direction is striking, the retro futuristic aesthetic is cool, and even though I'm not really a big fan of blatant product placement, the ship, the time period, and the anime playing on the monitor all give it a really strong identity.
I don't like any of that, by the way. I think all of it is preachy, bad, and stupid. It's a feeble and cheap attempt at selling us something that we know previously was good. Like, for example, take Akira and a 90s/80s aesthetic that this is definitely going for. It's just a feeble attempt at buying sympathy really early on by saying, hey, look at this. This was the cool thing, right? But, well, completely failing in every respect.
It has a lot of things that should appeal to a pretty broad audience. Yet the game's reveal was met with
Yeah, like a manly jawline.
resounding backlash. The trailer racked up 2.5 million views on YouTube, along with a devastating 286,000 dislikes. Across comment sections and social media, the most common criticism wasn't about the gameplay or setting, it was about the character. And I said this in my reaction to the Game Awards, but I'm going to say it again. This is an 80s theme sci-fi action game that is set in space. Your audience is predominantly male.
It's not actually set in space. There's nothing you do in space in this game.
Masculine, rough around the edges, bald woman is going to be an incredibly difficult sell, especially when players.
Now. The reason that she's bald has actually a really legitimate in-game purpose. And that is to hide her identity because she was one of the most notoriously well-known thieves, pirates, or whatever the fuck in the universe. So shaving her head definitely, makes her now not unseen and invisible and stuff.
Players have become hyper aware to social and political messaging in video games and how often it's forced into the medium. I've seen a lot of people argue, what about Sigourney?
Also, just an FYI, the good guys in this game are literally people that kill innocent people because, again, the background of these people is pirates or something like that. They're evil guys who have bounties on their head for being evil.
Sigourney Weaver in Alien. Sure, Ripley is one of the most beloved sci-fi protagonists of all time, but the key difference here is she earned that role. Alien didn't just throw you into the deep end and expect you to care. Ripley grew into the hardened, battle-scarred survivor that we all remember. Beyond that, Sigourney Weaver was already a recognized actress. Audiences were familiar with her and they wanted to see her succeed, but Intergalactic? We know nothing about this character. There's no connection, no earned trust, just an unconventional and uninteresting character with the expectation that we should care. And maybe in isolation this wouldn't be that big of an issue, but considering Naughty Dog's history, it's likely going
You don't even have to consider Naughty Dog's history. This just fails on its own.
to be something that nobody wants. They've already played this game before with The Last of Us Part 2. They pushed an overtly divisive character, dismissed player feedback, and then mocked those who pushed back. It's a pattern. And sure enough, that same air of pretentiousness is already hanging around Intergalactic. In an article written by Games Radar titled Intergalactic: The Heretic Prophet is a game about faith and religion, which Neil Druckmann jokes will surely get less hate than The Last of Us Part 2. You know what? Let's do something people won't care much about. Let's talk about faith and religion. Dustin Bailey writes, the story of
The Last of Us is a game littered with references from Neil's point of faith, by the way.
Last of Us 2 proved to be absolutely polarizing, with some players loving it, others hating it, and a subset of the latter group engaging in an ugly harassment campaign against the developers at Naughty Dog. The studio is now at work on Intergalactic: The Heretic Prophet, a sci-fi game about religion that the director Neil Druckmann jokes will surely get less hate than The Last of Us 2 did. Druckmann spoke about Intergalactic's fictional timeline with 28 Days Later writer and Civil War director Alex Garland as a part of Sony's creator-to-creator podcast series. I joke about this with the team, Druckmann said. With The Last of Us 2, we made certain creative decisions that got us a lot of hate. A lot of people loved it, but a lot of people hated that game. Who gives a shit, Garland quipped. Exactly, but the joke is like, you know what, let's do something that people won't care much about. Let's make a game about faith and religion, Druckmann concluded. While the statute of limitations for spoilers from a 2020 video game might be up.
That is insane. Oh yeah, the fans, the people who buy our game and pay my salary, if they hate it, fuck them. That's a great position to be at. Let's see if it lasts.
I'll refrain from speaking too directly about the creative decisions Druckmann is alluding to, since a lot of new Last of Us fans are presumably about to experience them as a part of Season 2 of the TV show. But when it comes to spoilers, Naughty Dog took some extreme measures to keep The Last of Us Part 2 from getting ruined the first time around. I've gotten in a lot of trouble, actually, because I was trying to protect the story, Druckmann told Garland. We released a trailer of The Last of Us 2 where we faked a shot, and we showed Joel somewhere where he would never make it to because of things that happened in the story as a deliberate way to throw off the scent. People that didn't like the game accused that of being false advertisement. Again, who gives a
Because it is. Gee, Neil, and you wonder why people hate you. You really do, huh?
shit? Garland responded. They can't be this stupid. Who am I kidding? Of course they're this stupid. This is a Hollywood movie mentality that has no place in gaming. See, if a movie bombs, it might dent a studio's reputation, but it is nothing compared to the financial impact of a $70 game failing to resonate with its audience. Unlike films, games rely on long-term engagement, word of mouth, and player investment. Saying who gives a shit about an audience criticism while openly antagonizing that very group of people that funded your project in the first place isn't just pretentious, it's signing your own death warrant. Now you want to take it further. Double down instead of course correct and proudly announce that your next game's going to be about religion, because that's sure to go well. Nothing says like we learn from our mistakes like choosing an even more divisive topic to alienate what audience you have left. But who gives a shit, right? Let me guess, the religion in Intergalactic is built on lies, because that's so original. I haven't seen that since, I don't know, every Final Fantasy game, Dragon Age with the Chantry, Outer Worlds with corporate...
Actually, that's true. Every Final Fantasy game, that is actually like a Final Fantasy staple. Oh god.
Hypocrisy, Assassin's Creed with Christianity, Far Cry 5 with cults, the Sanctus in Metaphor, and every other religious group in Starfield. Wow, groundbreaking. I'm surprised that the character isn't starting out with amnesia. Knowing Druckmann, like every other modern gaming writer, there will be zero nuance, it'll be overtly preachy, and directly on the nose. You know, the backlash for The Last of Us
Well, Druckmann only cares about spreading one thing.
Part 2 wasn't just about the story decisions, it was about a fundamental shift in Naughty Dog's creative direction under Neil Druckmann's unchecked authority. The studio that had once thrived under collaboration and balance had become a one-man show. I recently went back to play The Last of Us Part 2, and man, it's just so damn good. There's just so much soul in every part of it. The world feels lived in. The level design and atmosphere make it the most human take on a zombie apocalypse that I've ever seen, but it's the characters that pull you in. The writing, the voice acting, the little moments of conversations that make them feel real, the sound, the music, the pacing. It all just grabs you in a way that few games ever do. I originally had booted it up just to grab some footage for a video, but before I knew it, I was fully immersed, playing the game way longer than I thought that I would. Now I'm finishing it again, because how could I not? It's one of those once-in-a-lifetime experiences that we chase in gaming, the kind that sticks
You said The Last of Us Part 2, by the way, not the first one, I guess.
with you. The feeling you had when you first stepped into Halo, World of Warcraft, Red Dead Redemption, Metal Gear, that pure, unforgettable joy of playing something that you know that you're going to remember forever. And that's why I don't understand, how does a studio that created something so masterful as The Last of Us Part 1, how do they end up here? How do you go from a game that resonated so deeply with players, that felt so real, to a sequel that alienated half of the audience, and now a new IP that's doubling down on your worst instincts? Then I remember that I often ask this question with a lot of other series, and I end up coming to the same answer. This isn't the same Naughty Dog. Druckmann has been there the whole time, sure, but before, he used to have people that were keeping him grounded, people that were challenging him, pushing back, and refining his ideas into something that actually worked. Bruce Straley, Amy Hennig, and countless others shaped the Naughty Dog that people fell in love with. Now those voices are gone, and what's left is a studio that no longer has restraint, the balance, or the humility to make something for the players instead of itself. While Druckmann was credited as the creative director of The Last of Us Part 1, the game's story was not his alone. Bruce Straley and other key creatives played a crucial role in shaping it, rejecting his ideas that didn't fit into the world, including Druckmann's original revenge plot, a story where Tess would hunt Joel across the country. Straley pushed back, recognizing that it was forced and out of place, leading to a far stronger narrative that...
Bro, look at this. Tess, betrayed by Joel because woman good, man evil, on a mission to pursue him across the country. Jesus. Too bad we didn't get it, because then we would not be honestly in this mess, because everyone would have probably already abandoned it. Okay, listen, that's the thing. Neil Druckmann is a complete goddamn loser. A complete moron. A useless nothing. He is poison for anything. And first of all, he is self-centered, egotistic poison that thinks he is a gift to us.
a far stronger narrative that defined The Last of Us 1. But Druckmann never let go of that idea. Once he had full creative control of The Last of Us 2, that scrapped revenge plot became the core of the game. Joel, the heart of The Last of Us 1, was brutally killed off in a way to force players to sympathize for his killer, Abby. Joel, the man that we watched lose his daughter, struggle with trauma, bond with Ellie, and save her, needed to become the villain so that he could promote his personal beliefs and ideologies through Abby. Druckmann even retconned elements of the first game just to justify it, but players weren't buying it, and it backfired spectacularly. Despite massive marketing and media praise, The Last of Us 2 sold a third of the copies of its predecessor, from 30 million copies sold to 10 million copies sold. Naughty Dog burned years of goodwill, not by taking risks, but by refusing to listen. And now they're doing the exact same thing again with their next game. And we keep
Good. Fuck them.
seeing this cycle happen.
Again, Naughty Dog and Neil Druckmann never should have gotten famous in the first place. This should have been recognized as the luck that it was, the lightning in the bottle that it somehow became.
Over and over again, games that first and foremost should be video games are being hijacked by poor leadership and turned into battlegrounds for personal ideologies. It's not about creating great stories or memorable experiences anymore. It's about making a statement, drawing a line in the sand, and daring players to pick a side. You know, one of the things that I really like about making videos is that I get to evolve my opinion over time. I get to take in more information. I get to research. I get to read articles and watch videos and read the comments and things like that. And one thing that I've noticed is that I've seen a lot of people that have talked about how there needs to be less social politics and politics in video games. And I think that that sidesteps and misses the point entirely, because some of the most popular games, some of my most favorite games, and likely even your favorite game.
Oh, yeah. Good legendary drops. He has learned my the thing that I have said constantly. Politics in gaming is not bad. It's just hand over fist politics in gaming. Picking picking a side that is somehow righteous and better, even though it's poorly argumented in a game which makes politics bad. Politics in every game are actually great. It makes the plot more interesting. It builds depth and it builds narrative and it builds personality for characters. That's what politics actually does to a game. But that means that you need to be, one, neutral in your politics. Two, you need to be able to make one side interesting, but the other not just comically evil or clowns or generic bad guys. You know, you need to be able to make every side interesting, every side have valid points, and there not be a clear-cut winner whose view is better in an obvious way. And if you can do that, politics in games become amazing. It is one of the best ways to create depth for things. But again, we're talking about the modern day where most people are not capable of doing this, sadly. They just do it on a very superficial level. They are literally gliding along the top of the water and not even touching it.
Games have had some level of social or political content mixed into those games. But the difference is that with those games, see, we could understand the perspective of its creators because they did such a good job making the game and communicating their message or whatever it might be. The problem today is that things are so polarized. The line is being drawn so deep that we can't enjoy the game unless we perfectly align with the beliefs of its creator. The player's experience is coming at the cost of...
That sounds a little bit like calling us stupid, but okay.
...the message. That's not the way that things should be. That's not good management. That's not good creative direction. That's not a good video game. And ultimately, it's doing more harm not only to the studio, to its reputation, but also to the message that they're trying to deliver in the first place. It's an ineffectual product. And unless I'm mistaken, over the last couple of years, some of the most popular games that we have seen have been games that had nothing abrasively divisive about them. So then my question is, where is this obsession coming from? And why is it uniquely American in a lot of cases? Is it ego? Is it social media? And even more so, how are these publishers greenlighting it in the first place? This is not the stance that you should take against your audience. You should not shrug off their complaints. You should be listening to them.
These things are uniquely American because a lot of this is made in America. That's first of all. Second of all, because Americans really have a lack understanding about anything outside of America. Like, Currently, unironically, if you listen to the average American, they don't understand why something like Canada doesn't want to join the United States and become the 51st state. Like, unironically, a huge percentile of Americans are scratching their heads and thinking, how could you not want to join America? Same with Greenland. How could you not want to join America? And then they do a poll, and literally 99.5% of people who live in Greenland are like, fuck America. We don't want to be a part of your country. And Americans are like, what? That's why it's uniquely American. Because Americans sadly don't really understand the rest of the world at this point. Good.
You should not be doubling down on your mistakes. You know, I read another article that was talking about the podcast with Druckmann, and they said, yes, we need somebody out there challenging social norms. No, you don't. You need somebody selling video games. I'm sure that's what the Naughty Dog employees are going to be chanting from the unemployment line. We were challenging social norms. No. What are you talking about?
Social norms mostly exist because of a reason, and that reason is because they're good.
You know, the only thing that makes sense to me is that these companies were caught up in the political and social chaos of 2020. They mistook outrage for sustainable engagement, and they invested in it. And now they're so far down the rabbit hole that they can't turn back around. And now here we are watching yet another studio and another game going to its inevitable end. You know, games media has spent years shielding developers from the consequences of their own decisions, bending over backwards to explain away obvious failures while outright refusing to engage with the real reasons why games fail or succeed. The Gamer recently published an article analyzing why Monster Hunter Wilds is thriving and Dragon Age the Veilguard is...
The Gamer? Oh no, and it's by Andrew King. I think I remember the name, or at least the picture. Man, that is gonna be a lot of cuck opinions.
Floundering, and while they touch on some solid points, they conveniently ignore the elephant in the room. One game respected its audience, the other didn't. Nowhere in this article is Veilguard's infantilized, censored narrative discussed. Nowhere is there a critique about how the art style abandoned the franchise's grittier fantasy aesthetic, an aesthetic that we have seen games like Elden Ring and Baldur's Gate 3 have proven is massively successful. The article completely sidesteps how the game's modern social commentary, gender ideology, and contemporary
paraplegic dance, whatever.
Dialogue completely clash with its medieval fantasy setting, alienating players who wanted a classic Dragon Age experience, but they do bring up something interesting, a concept, room to shrink, and I think this is really important context in regards to Intergalactic and as well as many other games that we've seen fail. Andrew King of The Gamer wrote, most straightforward answer is that Monster Hunter had a lot more rough edges to sand off. It's a series that is known for its complex combat, esoteric multiplayer, and interlocking systems that aren't always well tutorialized. Monster Hunter Wilds still delivered on much of what the series is known for, as someone who has played a couple dozen hours of the previous games, but never dove into one especially deep. Wilds is very recognizable as Monster Hunter. The core loop is still there, it's just contextualized a bit differently thanks to this entry's greater emphasis on story and characters. Killing monsters, harvesting their parts, turning them into gear, that's all still here, but with a better on-ramp, lower difficulty, and more narrative hooks. The game also retains much of the series' complexity. You still have a ton of weapon types that each take practice to master. There are multiple currencies that you need to collect, crafting to engage with, and thoughtful combat to learn. The Veilguard's problem is that Dragon Age was never as tough to master as Monster Hunter. Origins had a lot of role-playing depth and a detailed real-time with pause battle system, but the previous entries had already moved away from that by the time that Veilguard rolled around. Veilguard was streamlined in every way. It traded in Inquisition's open world for a level-based structure, and the levels were hyperlinear, leaving little room for exploration. The dialogue choices were superficial, allowing for little real roleplay. The combat was fun but simple, action RPG fare. The series lore was pared back or ignored, and the companions were largely uninteresting. The game began as a live service game, and it shows in the lack of detail and depth given to the world. It feels like a place you would inhabit with 100 other players, not like it was designed to react to your actions. The idea is simple.
Wow. That is such a bad summary.
Here, Monster Hunter can afford to lose some of its players after launch because it has a strong, dedicated fan base. The series has always been built on a solid foundation, and it continues to expand without alienating the people that made it a success. It attracts in new players, but it doesn't sacrifice its identity to do so. Now compare that to Dragon Age the Veilguard, which did the opposite. Instead of Keeping its fan base intact and growing outward, it boxed itself in, narrowing its appeal to a very specific player while disregarding the ones that kept the franchise alive for over a decade. The result, a game that didn't have any room to shrink because it had nowhere else left to go. It was a game that launched into a corner, and now it's stuck. Now, with that added context, you should see my perspective, because The Last of Us Part 2 is one of the clearest warning signs available. Just like Veilguard, it narrowed its audience, disregarded what made the original resonate with millions so that they could push an alienating, polarizing narrative, and now Naughty Dog is doubling down again with Intergalactic. Instead of course correcting, these studios are spending
Calling this narrowing down your audience instead of just calling it making the game shit and boring and, dull, I think is a disservice, okay? The reality is they did not narrow down their audience. They thought they are improving upon their audience. They didn't think that they are reducing choice. They didn't think that they are ruining maps. They didn't think any of this. They thought that they are doing amazing things, but the problem is they weren't. They were making everything more simple, less interesting, less choice, and that's pretty much it.
spending more money while selling to fewer people. Every new game has a bigger budget, a longer development cycle, and higher expectations, but instead of broadening their appeal, they just keep shrinking their audience to an ideological niche. The cycle is obvious by now. Shrink the audience, spend more money in development, dismiss criticism, and then blame the players when it flops. I can't believe I actually have to say this, but if you're spending more money while making a game that fewer people want and actively dividing the audience that you do have, you are going to fail. And it's not just that developers are refusing to recognize clear warning signs. It's become an industry apparatus. Instead of engaging with player criticism in good faith, they've developed an overused playbook: gaslight, deflect, and vilify. When players were pushing back against The Last of Us Part 2, they were told that their criticism wasn't valid. They were lumped in with some of the worst people online, the doxers, the threats, the actual extreme.
You know what people say when you criticize them, but that criticism is completely false? It's just a bunch of lies. They don't fucking care. They keep on doing it. And this is why these people will never win. They can lie, they can cheat, they can steal, they can do whatever the hell that they want to do. The average normal person is going to see it and say, fuck you. I'm sticking to what I have because clearly you're a lying piece of shit. And given time, more people are going to understand that they are being lied to, and so on, and thus the tide shifts. That's what will always happen. That has always happened, and that will keep happening. 10 out of 10. Anyway, that was Legendary Drops. Bye-bye!